The rollout of mobile networks requires huge amounts of money to be invested, and one way of recovering these costs is for operators to charge high usage fees. The high costs may discourage operators from migrating to new technologies and provide an unfair financial challenge to new operators in the market. Mobile co-location or infrastructure sharing has many benefits. It can lower the cost of network deployment, provide a more efficient energy usage, and provide an alternative network acquisition plan for new operators. Because not so many radio towers are required, it reduces public health, environmental concerns, electrical interference concerns, and reduces the negative impact on the landscape. There are two basic categories for a regulator to consider: passive sharing and active sharing. Passive sharing refers to the sharing of space only and where the networks are kept separate. Active sharing refers to the sharing of equipment such as antennas, radio nodes, node controllers, transmission, and sometimes elements of the core network. One problem with active sharing is the inability for one operator to offer a better quality service than their competition, as the network they both use is identical. The passive infrastructure in a mobile network is composed mainly of electrical or fiber cables, masts and pylons, physical space on the ground, towers, rooftops, as well as shelter and support cabinets, containing power supply, air conditioning, alarm installation, and transmission distribution frames. This is generally referred to as a site that, when shared, may be managed by one or both of the operators or outsourced to a third-party tower company. Site sharing, however, does have a number of disadvantages. More antennas separated by each other by a minimum distance to avoid interference will be required on each mast. The masts will need to be taller, more robust, and visually intrusive. Communities may sometimes prefer several smaller masts rather than a larger one. The regulator decides whether site sharing is optional or mandatory. An example of a case when the regulator may require mandatory sharing is to speed up coverage and service in a low-populated area. Regulators can be guided by those policy objectives when setting up rules for mandatory or optional site sharing. For example, if the principal policy objective is to reduce visual intrusion and environmental interference, regulators may choose only to impose site sharing for those facilities that are more intrusive, such as towers and pylons, and not for rooftops. To engage in site sharing, an agreement is needed. Such agreements may concern one individual site or be a framework agreement for several sites. An agreement covers points such as geographic and population coverage objectives, environmental concerns, and the promotion of competition. It defines what passive facilities are to be shared, as well as pricing and general terms and conditions. The price of sharing may have an important impact on the willingness of operators to roll out their infrastructure. Some operators may be inclined to deny access to other operators despite the availability of space for site sharing on their own infrastructure. They may argue that they need to reserve space for their own use at a later date to improve network capacity. Regulators may consider setting up conditions, such as the time that operators would be allowed to reserve space on their infrastructure for their own use. Site sharing arrangements generally allow operators to keep independent control of their respective networks and services and retain control over their own radio planning. Regulators can provide clear guidance to operators on the type of arrangements that are allowed under the applicable laws and regulations. The regulator may draw up model agreements for site sharing. Instead of the operator being a site owner, a tower company could own the towers and masts, or possibly the whole site. The tower company could provide a variety of services to the outsourcing operator, such as radio and transmission planning, site acquisition, site construction, equipment installation, and site maintenance. Outsourcing deals may create considerable financial savings for operators and allow operators to focus on their core business, which is providing wireless services to their customers. Regulators may contribute for the rollout of wireless networks by promoting and authorizing tower companies to sell their services to mobile operators. The active elements of a wireless network are those elements that can be managed by operators such as antennas, antenna systems, transmission systems, channel elements, and others. Operators may share those elements and keep using different parts of the spectrum assigned to them. Telecom vendors can supply equipment which has expressly been designed for active mobile sharing. Using 3G technology as an example, there are several elements of the network that may be shared among operators. The first is the Node B equipment necessary to interface with mobile handsets via the air interface. The Node B contains a number of devices such as the power amplifier, power supply, air conditioning, support cabinet, alarm installation, transmission switch, and the TRX. The TRX is a device which contains both a transmitter and a receiver and is responsible for sending and receiving signals at the frequency assigned to the operators concerned. The TRX is a very important device since it enables communications with mobile handsets. The second is the RNC, that is responsible for the control of several Node Bs, including traffic and mobility management. The third is the core network. This is the intelligent part of the network and includes the MSCs and media gateways. Another element of the core network is the OMC, responsible for managing the operator's network elements. This may raise competitive concerns because operators would be able to access information relating to each other's traffic and volume. Because of this, the OMC may be one of the elements that should not be shared by operators. Extended site sharing is where operators share both the passive elements of a site and the active equipment. In extended site sharing arrangements, operators may also share the TRX. This will demand that the parties share the spectrum too. Although spectrum sharing is technically possible, it may raise regulatory challenges, in particular because of rules dealing with spectrum optimization. While it is technically possible for operators using different sets of frequencies to share an antenna, this option involves a number of technical challenges. While an antenna can be shared, it is usually directed to a certain position, which is based on the operator's own radio optimization strategy. The optimization strategy of the sharing operator may require it to change the position of the antenna, which may be difficult or impossible when the antenna is shared. Operators may install their own equipment in shared racks. In this option, power supply, air conditioning, ancillary cabinet and alarm installations are also shared, providing up to a 10% capital expenditure saving for an operator per Node B if battery backup facilities are also shared. The TRX and power amplifier should remain independent, allowing for radiation at each operator's assigned frequency range, unless the spectrum is shared as well. In the case of full RAN sharing, the communication between the RNC and the Node B has to be under the independent control of one operator as far as its service is concerned. This communication may take place using the same cables and connections, but must be logically separated. Operators should be able to control in an independent way all the parameters that determine the quality of the network, such as coverage, speed, and the handover parameters. In addition, operations, maintenance, and network control should be separated. The fiber or microwave transmission between Node Bs, RNCs, and the core may be shared when spare capacity allows for it. When backhaul transmission cannot be shared, operators have to install microwave antennas on the towers in addition to the antennas used to communicate with the handsets. This increases the weight of the antenna on the tower, requiring higher and heavier towers, increasing the cost of construction and visual intrusion. It is clear that network sharing agreements may entail benefits for operators and the general public.